move on. The story of this week's elections has been the Scottish National Party taking over as the largest in the Parliament. But they were dealt the blow tonight when the Lib Dems maintained that they would not entertain a referendum on independence. And it could cause problems, of course, for a coalition. So, what should we make of the election results in terms of the future of the United Kingdom? Is the appetite for independence growing in Scotland, or was this a vote of disillusionment with Labour? Is the 300-year union in jeopardy? Are you Scottish? You're impatient to break free? Do you feel that Scotland will only be a grown-up nation if you do it on your own? Perhaps you can't wait to see the back of the Scots. You can pick up the number. You can pick up the phone tonight, 0500 909 693. The text 85058, and the email nolan@bbc.co.uk. Andrew's been calling us already from London. Andrew, evening to you.
A very good evening to you, Stephen.
Well,
I mean, I think you'll know better than I. If you look in Northern Ireland, where you've got Ian Paisley, Martin McGuinness, First and Deputy First Minister designates, rather more extreme, no disrespect intended, than Alex Salmond. Now, I don't get the impression that they're keen to break away. Equally, in Scotland, if the SNP were completely hot, they'd have made Labour go into meltdown, but they didn't. They're only one more Member of Parliament. If we look to Wales, again, Plaid Cymru didn't succeed there. They're an independence party. So I just don't think... I think people in the United Kingdom, we're very lucky that next week Northern Ireland Assembly will be up and running, Scottish Parliament will be up and running, Westminster's running, and Wales is running. We live in a great country that I think very few people want actually to see break up.
Yeah, but are you on the verge of seeing the very first steps that are happening, Andrew? That's the question.
Oh, I don't think so, because we've had 300 years of this. I mean, you're quite right. I mean, we're very lucky to, again, in 1707, when they were joining together the parliaments, I think that the crowns had been joined together in 1603, when James the Sixth came down and became James the First. I think we've got years, hundreds of years, centuries of history that hasn't stood the test of time in Europe in the way it has in the United Kingdom. And I think that, given that there are 6 million Scots, 5 million of whom had the vote because they were taking out children and everything like that, if they'd have been really keen on independence, they'd have voted for the SNP in droves. Well,
I'll tell you what, Andrew, stay on the line. I'd be interested to hear your reaction to Joe Middleton. Joe's from the Independence First pressure group for a referendum on an independent Scotland. Joe, evening to you.
Hi, good evening.
Andrew doesn't think it's going to happen. What do you read into this vote then?
Well, the most important thing about the vote is, for the first time, the SNP are actually the largest party and gained the largest vote in the Scottish Parliament. So that's like a sea change in politics. And the fact is, the SNP are the largest party. We've got through the Scottish electoral system. And the fact is, since they've won the election, they should have the right to put forward their proposals. And the main proposal during the election was to say that they wanted to have a referendum on independence. So I think the Liberal Democrats are now in fourth place, so they shouldn't really be dictating to the winner to say that they can't have a referendum on independence.
Spell out the benefits to me, Joe.
Well, the benefits are that the people of Scotland would actually decide on independence, because these elections, there's always a lot of different issues within the elections, and it's not a clear choice between independence and the status quo.
No, but I'm looking for the benefits of independence, as you see
The benefits of independence is purely that we will decide our own affairs, and that our foreign policy and our defence policy will be decided by the people of Scotland, and that would be a vast improvement, because if you think about it, our MPs voted against Trident, and yet Trident still happened. So the whole point is that if we're independent, we'd make that decision ourselves. Now, Independence First is purely and simply about a referendum. We don't have any political policies attached to that, so it can be wide enough to include absolutely everybody.
This is some kind of romantic notion of a free Scotland. It's not practical.
No, I don't think that's the case at all. At the end of the day,
you think Scotland's going to be able to stop Trident?
Yes, obviously, because if Scotland was independent, they could leave NATO, they could decide that they didn't want nuclear weapons anymore, and our MPs actually voted in Westminster, the majority of them voted against Trident, so therefore why should Scotland take Trident when we don't need it?
You're talking about Scotland here, accounting for only 8.5% of the British population.
That's exactly the point. The point is that Scotland is only a tenth the size of the UK population, so therefore as long as we're in a union, we're a country that's 10 times our size, our decisions will never be taken seriously.
Graham Booth, UKIP MEP, also joining us tonight. Graham, evening to you.
Good evening.
You'd be fighting against an independent Scotland. Is it really worth the while?
Well, I'm really concerned, having heard Alex Salmond some years ago on a TV interview when he was asked if Scotland did get its full independence, would he apply to the EU for individual membership of it? And he said yes, he would, which would immediately give away that independence forever. I mean, we're now governed by the EU, and that's why I'm out there in Brussels trying to get us out of the thing. Why on earth Scotland, having got its independence, and if they do, if that's the wish of the people, so be it. I mean, the UK Independence Party would like to see the Union retained. I mean, I've always admired tremendously the Scottish law, the education, the discipline, which you've had a pretty free hand with, under so-called British rule, if you want to call it that. But, you know, they've had a great degree of independence, and not to mention quite a lot of money from England. I don't see what they would gain. Certainly they won't gain a thing if, having got their independence, they then go and join the EU.
Joe Middleton?
Well, the question of the EU is an entirely different question. At the end of the day, if we're independent, we can choose to be in the EU or not. The point about independence is we would make that choice as the Scottish people if we're independent. You know, so the EU is a different thing. Now, UKIP is going to my mind, a bit ridiculous because the UK is already independent. The UK could already decide if they wanted to leave the EU, and the fact is they don't want to at the moment.
I've got no. Hello.
Yes, Andre. Oh, sorry, this is Tudor in London. Hello, Tudor.
Hi, mate. How's it going?
Go on, mate.
All right, I just totally think that inevitably we'll actually end up splitting up in the next 10, 20 years, definitely 20 years. I think there's nothing wrong with having your own national identity and stuff. I personally think if you look at with the European Union and stuff, everybody's kind of got their own national identity, but they can still work with each other and stuff. Everybody's kind of, the guy that you had on earlier talking about we had the old union for 300 years. Doesn't mean it has to just carry on that way. You know, obviously life is different now than it was 300 years ago, as such. And I personally think that, going down our way. I mean, obviously the Scots, they want to do their own thing, and inevitably Welsh, I think they want to go it alone and stuff. I don't see anything wrong with it. I don't think, if they feel they can be better off without us, the English, and the Welsh feel that way, then why not?
Grim Booth, what are the benefits for the rest of the UK if the